Bernie Sanders got jaxed. Now, you might say, well, what the hell is Jamal talking about? Got jaxed. This is a Vanderpump Rules thing. Vanderpump is this reality show that comes on that when I was in the hospital, I kind of just binge watched because I didn't have anything else to watch and got addicted to it. But Jax, model, used to be anyway, bartender, sleeps with pretty much anything that has a pulse, getting older. But now that he's older, it's a little bit sadder, but put that to the side for the moment. Sleeping with anything with a pulse. Invariably, always dropping that thing with a pulse and doing so in some of the most inopportune, horrible ways and for some of the most ridiculous of reasons. And then not calling. Tell him it's trash. I'm making the point that Bernie Sanders got jaxed. Joe Biden gave Bernie Sanders a song and dance. Joe Biden got the tail. Sealed the deal. Got it. Was all up in it. Told his friends it was trash. Told his Wall Street buddies. Told his, I beat the socialists. Told anybody who would listen to, I'm not going to back Medicare for all. I'll even veto Medicare for all. I'm not for a Green New Deal. I don't believe defund the police. Got the tail, told people it was trash, and then didn't call. I want to show you the exact moment when Bernie Sanders realized Joe Biden wasn't going to call. That Joe Biden and those task force didn't mean anything. That the people that Joe Biden was going to put into those positions, people, equal policy to some degree, were not going to be progressive in any way. They were going to be a rainbow coalition, yes, but if the person is a revolving door to Raytheon, and that's bad when the individual is white. Here's a newsflash. It doesn't make it progressive just because a person is black, just because a person has a vagina, just because a person is gay, just because a person has a vagina and a penis at the exact same time, just because a person is a little person. I'm making the point that just because it's not white doesn't make it progressive by definition. It's nonsense. They say that shit with Obama, when the reality of it is being progressive is not what you look like. It's not the theatrics. It's what you do. It's the policies that you take. It's the positions that you take. It's the fights that you get into. That is what makes you a lefty, not just being a minority. There's a difference in those things. And it is a soothing thing for the corporate class who want to deal with the identity stuff, but don't necessarily want to deal with the real term economic issues. And so, yeah, I can understand the people on television lavishing praise on Joe Biden. Oh, look at this progressive administration, whereas policy doesn't matter. The fact that it is not benefiting the people at the bottom, despite the fact that they're acting as if. Meaning, just because you put somebody in that has a particular color or racial persuasion or a particular sexual persuasion doesn't in fact mean that they're going to be acting in the interests of those groups, which is always the implicit assumption at putting somebody in those positions. I'm saying you had a black president that gave 95% of the income gains to the top 1% while letting homeowners go bust. Many of those homeowners were black. His blackness in no way saved those homeowners, nor did his blackness stop him from basically throwing his body to protect Wall Street. Your blackness, your womanness, your gayness, those are not things that deal with economic realities. And I'm making the point that, yeah, Biden could have an entirely white administration, all male. And if he was putting forth Medicare for all, if he was putting forth a Green New Deal, if he was getting rid of college loans and student debts and making college free, minorities would be far, far better off than this nonsense. So what is multicolored? What are the policies? That's what matters. Those policies will be affecting various people in those color groups, in those disadvantaged communities. That's what matters. If you're throwing somebody, basically, here's this black woman, but that black woman is not necessarily going to do anything for black women, then what does it matter? Yes, there's a theatrics to it. And yes, I appreciate when people of color reaches various positions, but I want to be able to full-throatedly give my approval to those people of color in those positions because they're doing God's work, not because they are just another black face on empire. Those are different things. Take a look at this video. Sanders, this is so sad. He's talking about Biden and the people who Biden put in his office and various cabinet positions and whatnot. Tandon, like openly vindictive. In fact, Near Tandon attacked Sanders' campaign coordinator, campaign person. This is when he worked for Near Tandon, but it's still illustrative of the way she behaves and the way she acts. She is basically Trump towards the left on Twitter, and basically in her hostility towards the left. The fact that Biden would put her into that position, the fact that Rahm Emanuel is even up for conversation, the Raytheon guy that they're talking about for Secretary of Defense. I am talking about these people are swamp monsters that are going to fully entrench DC. Sanders helped shuffle sheepdog lefties to the Biden administration. Sanders gave clout to task force that he had to know were bogus and didn't mean anything. Sanders basically was the portal, the credibility that Joe Biden was using to try to con lefties into voting for him. So what do you say for yourself, Sanders? Now that everybody can see what has taken place, what do you say for yourself? And I have the exact moment. I found the video when Sanders realized he has been jaxed. Take a look at this before we get to that video. This is Sanders having a conversation. And this, by the way, is not the moment that has dawned on Sanders that Joe Biden has gotten the tail, has told his friends it was trash, and was never, ever going to call him back again.
How do you feel about the cabinet so far? Do you feel like there's been enough progressive representation in Joe Biden's cabinet picks?
Well, as I have said many times, the progressive movement in this country is a very significant part of the Democratic coalition. Now, I know some of the folks in the Democratic establishment don't want to recognize it, but that is a fact. And in truth, if it wasn't for the hard work of a lot of progressive grassroots organizations who got young people involved in the political process, working class people involved in a way that we have not seen, Joe Biden would not have won that election. And I think that's pretty clear. And my point has been from day one that those voices, that movement, deserves representation in the cabinet. And if your question is, have I seen that yet? No, I have not. I've seen some good appointments, people that I like. I think people who are really, really smart, experienced, but I have not seen people from the progressive movement per se in that cabinet.
Are you holding out hope for any position, specific cabinet position to get a progressive voice?
Yeah, it's not a position. It is a question, should the progressive movement in this country, in which tens of millions, many millions, I shouldn't say tens of millions, but many, many millions of people, that a movement that constitutes 35, 40% of the Democratic Party, should that movement be represented in one capacity or more than one capacity or not? The answer is absolutely yes.
The answer is not should. Politics it's not built on shoulds. I hope you understand that. There's all sorts of things that should be in existence. Politics is built on leverage. Power concedes nothing without a demand. And this is not a situation where you're even talking about a demand. You're talking about begging, basically, Joe Biden to do the right thing. Joe Biden should just do the right thing and have progressives in administration. Why? Why? Based on this conversation that you're having, Joe Biden not only didn't put progressives in administration, or very least very few, none in any kind of significant role, especially in comparison to the monsters that he has in administration. But on top of that, you backed him regardless. You pushed your supporters to back Joe Biden, and you will push your supporters to do him again. And if that's the realm to which we're talking about, and even now with this kind of sour grapes, oh, Joe Biden should put more progressives in administration. Why? What incentive? What force? What leverage? What reason would Joe Biden have to do that when you, people like you, will be out here telling people, progressives, to still vote for the Democrat regardless? I'm making the point that Joe Biden doesn't have to do it because you're a captive audience. That even now, at the end of the day, you will still end up pushing your supporters to vote for the random Democrat, meaning you have become irrelevant. And from the Democratic standpoint, they don't have to acknowledge the left because the left, factoring into their calculations, doesn't really have to factor into their calculations at all. If you're a captive audience, why do I even need to put you into the equation? Yes, you're going to be in the equation, but there's going to be a plus sign beside you because ultimately you are a captive audience. It is not a situation where they're concerned that they're not going to be able to get you. Yes, they reach out to Republicans because Republicans are not a captive audience. Republicans have somewhere else to go. The left, famously, apparently, supposedly, at the very least, the left believes it. And I suspect you believe it. Don't. That's the difference, Sanders. This interview is maddening, and this interview is somewhat sad because you're sitting here as if you are utterly and entirely baffled and shocked that Joe Biden didn't put lefties into the cabinet, that your task force were trash, despite the fact that in the Washington Post it was very clear that they made the point that says, yes, we talked about these task force, but, don't pay no attention to that. Or that the conversations that were being had beforehand with Elizabeth Warren and some of these other people, the Wall Streets, being told, don't worry about that. There were certain things that need to be said just to get through the election. I'm making the point, Joe Biden has been in office for 40-something years, and there is no reason to believe that on day one after clinching the victory, that you would get anything out of it. Why would you? He has everything he wants. At the point where he's in, he's in. And all of your leverage and all of your power and everything that you had the potential to do goes up in smoke. The nanosecond that Biden gets in goes up in smoke. The nanosecond that Biden gets through the primary, it gets difficult. I am making the point that your best strength, your weight, was all before the election. And you threw it all away. There's all sorts of questions that should be asked here. I mean, you should ask, hey, why did you expect to do something different than he did for the last 47 years? Was there a personal conversation between you two that gave you some indication that Joe Biden was going to do something different? Did he give you specific plans, details of things that he was going to do differently? Or did you just believe he was going to do the right thing? Why did you support him without any kind of preconditions? Unqualified, unconditional support. And why would unconditional support in any way command any leverage? Isn't it true that your best bet to get Joe Biden to do anything would have been to hold him accountable early on using your supporters as leverage to pull and get them to appropriate policy? And even truer, wouldn't that have been better off from the standpoint of protecting those members of Congress and maybe even winning these Senate seats a little bit cleaner? There are all sorts of questions that should be asked here following this up. But that's not the moment that Sanders realized it. This is the moment that Sanders realized that Joe Biden got the tail, got the ass, told his friends it was trash, and wasn't ever going to call back. This is the moment.
Here for your remarks, and thank you for welcoming me to your live stream here. As you've indicated, we are living in an unbelievably unprecedented moment. You and I were chatting a few months ago. Not in a million years would we have believed that we would be talking to each other in our respective homes, that we could not, do rallies, that we could not get out of the house. We would not have believed that we'd be looking not only at a pandemic, which, as you indicated, has taken over 20,000 lives in our country, 500,000 people infected, but has cost us 16 million jobs. And that's probably a conservative number. The real number is probably higher than that. So we are in a terrible moment, an unprecedented moment. And I know we share the understanding that we've got to go forward right now and out of this in an unprecedented way to address the terrible pain that so many of our fellow Americans are feeling. So today I am asking all Americans, I'm asking every Democrat, I'm asking every independent, I'm asking a lot of Republicans to come together in this campaign to support your candidacy, which I endorse, to make certain that we defeat somebody who I believe, and I'm speaking just for myself now, is the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country.
Yes, that's right. I think Bernie Sanders realized that Biden got the tail, probably before this point, to some degree, but definitely at the time that he was endorsing him, he knew, as he was saying these words, that Biden got the tail, told his friends it was trash, and wasn't going to call him back. Everything else after that point was theatrics. He knew that he was sheepdogging. He knew that he was bringing people to the party, and Biden wasn't going to do anything different. Biden had been telling people to kick rocks and go vote for the other guy. So it was very clear that these were things that was going to take place, meaning everything that has transpired was known, and everything at this point is just a politics, theater. Biden was never going to do those things, and it was obvious that Biden was never going to do those things, but Sanders sheepdogged his people anyway. All of this stuff after the fact is sour grapes. So I'm going to end this here. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. I will talk to you guys in a few. Thanks all. By the way, stay tuned. There's an interview coming up. And make sure you hit the subscription button. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you hit the bell. YouTube does weird things. Like, share, and of course,